This is Talk of the Devils, the athletic show dedicated to Manchester United. Coming up today, Manchester United go toe-to-toe with Leeds at Elland Road, but again, leave with just a point. Ruben Amorim gets tongues wagging with provocative press conference comments both before and after the game, and goals are still the problem as Manchester United prepare for an important trip to Burnley on Wednesday night. Hello! Ian Irvin is enjoying a well-earned break over the new year, so you've got me hosting. Hi. Ian, enjoy your break. Joining me today, I've got the man of 100 stadium visits and even more mild surprises, Mr. Andy Mitten. How you doing?
Hi, Carl. Just back from Leeds right now. All good.
I got the news hound himself, Laurie Whitwell.
Hello, Carl. You okay, guys?
And the person who's often described as the fifth Beatle in the mailbox. I just think he's my friend. It's Mark Critchley. How you doing, Mark?
Hi, I actually prefer going by Bez. Because I could basically stand around with maracas and the podcast would be the same. But yeah.
I've seen you on a dance floor. You've not got the same rhythm, mate. Sorry.
Oh, excuse me. Come on. You know that's not true.
All right, then. That's a bunch of preamble. Happy New Year to everyone listening. Shall we just get into this then? Leeds United won. Manchester United won. We'd won this. Mark, Andy, you were both there. What's your assessment?
I said... When Andy asked me this question coming out the game, I said that this is one of those where you take your point and you get out of dodge. That's how it felt. I think there's more to say to it than just that. I think it was within the circumstances, given all the absences. I think you can say that it was a creditable performance by United. A tight game. Either side could really have won it. There was a period, certainly after Cunha scored and got the equaliser, that I thought United were on top. Joshua Zirkzee coming on, I thought it was one of his better performances recently, and he really helped tie things together in the final third. But Leeds also had their moments. We all expected this to be ugly. We expected it to be horrible. It was actually quite a nice sunny day in Leeds, and I had a lovely drive with Andy Mitten, both there and back. Thanks for the lift. And I don't think it was quite the ugly, grim, backs to the wall performance that, well, a day even, that we were expecting in the end. It was better than that. And I think there's some positives to take in that respect. But at the same time, you look and it's, 1 win in 5? I think United have dropped points against 5 of the bottom 6 now. We have to couch all this within the absences, within the context and the circumstances. And I think that's only right. And so for that reason, I think you take your point and you get out of there.
Andy?
Yeah, I was nervous. Going to Leeds because of how hostile it is. And it was. Nervous taking Critch because don't usually travel to games with a Yonner. And I thought he might turn up with a tray of pies or get a little whippet dog out of his bag, or if we stopped in heavy traffic and there was heavy traffic, start like Morris dancing on the hard shoulder. But he didn't do any of those things. We got there okay. And I feel that Manchester United were missing so many key players that to avoid defeat against a Leeds team, they've had some very good results. You know, they've beaten Chelsea and Palace pretty convincingly at home. They drew against Liverpool. They lost narrowly at Manchester City. They drew at Anfield. To avoid defeat, given the context, was a good thing. I don't think Manchester United played that badly. I think there were some positives for Josh Zirkzee when he came on. Was very influential, matches Cunha. I thought Lenny Yoro was having a decent game up until the goal and going off soon after. I thought Manu Ugarte did all right. Casemiro may have given the ball away 3 times in the first 10 minutes, but his feet in tight spaces were far superior to anyone else on the pitch. Overall, it's probably a fair result. So I like that angle Critch is coming at is, get out of there with your point. Other teams are dropping lots of points. So somehow, as we speak, Manchester United are 5th. And doesn't feel like we've won enough points to be 5th. But Manchester United have. We'll absolutely talk about the other stuff that's been said at Leeds. I was sat right next to the Leeds fans, the last seat in the press box. Hood went up, head went down. Not a chance I was celebrating. Not that I would anyway, in that working environment. Any Manchester United positives?
Laurie, you had to make do with watching it on the television like me. Unfortunately, the UK broadcast lost the sound for just a little bit.
Was that unfortunate?
What were you able to pass from seeing it on the big screen?
Well, I was overjoyed to see the aggregators before kickoff take some of Andy Mitten's fantastic words and use them as breaking. I don't know if you saw this, Andy, but you did a story about the rivalry between Leeds and Man United and how it was going on for 500 years. Breaking at
Just
Andy
in.
Mitten. Just in. That was it. I mean,
It's just mad, isn't it? It's just
what a world we
mental.
live in, eh?
What a world we live in. I was going to reply, but I don't, breaking, new book released. It's called The Bible. It's full of really interesting things. A Roman Empire has been established.
On to the actual matters of the game and the context, I think, is all important here, isn't it? And to Critch's point, in the fact that you had these pretty sort of tasty, shall we say, not tasty quotes, are they? But you could see the interaction before the game from Ruben Amorim. Something is going on. We can certainly say that. And there's a lot of focus after the Wolves game on his position, on the style of play, on the system. When he's changed, from a back four that kind of seemed to work to a degree against Newcastle to then back to a back three. What's he going to do? Well, he's going to play, effectively sort of 8 defensively minded players, I would say, 2 attackers. I guess he didn't really have loads of choice, but Joshua Zirkzee being the obvious person that he could have switched in for one of the defenders, and obviously he then did do that, and he made an assist within minutes of coming on. So you're sort of wondering, well, if that had been the start, then could something else has happened? I do feel like he was going for the safety first measure at Elland Road in that kind of atmosphere, just nullify any kind of electric start that Leeds might have, which is clearly what their sort of agenda would have been. So I sort of have some sympathy for that, but I think a lot of people understandably would be questioning, this is Manchester United. You can't go to Leeds and play that many sort of defensively minded players, whatever the injuries and whatever the AFCON absentees. But they actually played a lot more sort of aggressively than I thought they would do. So it wasn't a passive sort of back 3, back 5. It was actually quite purposeful, sort of out of possession, winning the ball quite high up. And then once they got possession of the ball, I thought they controlled it pretty well, really. And I know that Calvert-Lewin had that chance in the first half that hit the post, but I thought United were the ones creating the better opportunities. Obviously, Cunha, scores early on. I did want to kind of see that back. The flag went up like pretty early, and I know it probably was offside, but I sort of thought you're supposed to let those kind of things run, really. Obviously, corners were an issue for Leeds to handle. Dallo could have done better at one of them. So, yeah, I thought overall it was actually a pretty decent display in the circumstances for United, but I do think it's coloured by what Ruben Amorim said before the game and then after as well. So I kind of wonder. I kind of forgot that Burnley was on Wednesday, to be honest. Like, it's coming thick and fast, these games now. But I do kind of wonder what context this point ends up being, really, in the grand scheme of things.
Critch, you were there for both the pre-match and the post-match press conferences. Let's start with the pre-match quotes first. So he was asked about the transfer window and said, the transfer window is not going to change. We have no conversations in this moment to have any change in the squad. Then in the embargoed section, he was asked about his system and quotes he'd given previously about how he didn't believe he could no longer play the perfect 3-4-3, to which he said, I don't want to talk about that. I just focus on the Leeds game. So in the pre-match press conference, you're sat there typing away. What's your feeling?
The feeling of the pre-match press conference was like no other pre-match press conference that I've been sat in under Ruben Amorim, to be honest. From the start, even before he said any of that, I think you boys know what it's like now in the new Carrington. He kind of emerges from a side door on sort of your 9 o'clock, and he usually comes in and he says, "Hi guys," and he did exactly the same again on Friday. But the "hi guys," even the way, the tone of just that, made me turn around and look at him and sort of saw this hangdog, quite down, deflated expression on his face. And that was the tone of the whole press conference. I think even in very difficult moments, I'm thinking post-Grimsby, I'm thinking often post-match press conferences immediately after the game when there's been a bad result, Amorim can be he wears his heart on his sleeve. We've all seen that, right? And even then, there's usually a bit of a laugh, there's usually a smile, there's usually a joke. He can be quite self-deprecating at times to try and disarm journalists. We're used to seeing that side of his personality. That wasn't there whatsoever on Friday. And that immediately felt like something was up. he made that comment about the transfer window, not expecting any business, or essentially that there's no conversations going on at the moment. It's quite, that's in stark contrast to what he was saying pre-Christmas, when it was more about the possibility of doing something. We know things have slightly changed then with United's interest in Antoine Semenyo. We believe now his preference is to join City. So perhaps it looks like that's not going to happen. And we also know that United really are only looking to do long-term targets in this window and accelerate things that they could do in the summer. It leaves the cupboard a little bit bare in terms of actual bona fide targets that you're looking at to bring in this month. And so that perhaps explains that. But you're right, that it was the embargoed section in the exchange with Jamie Jackson from The Guardian that really sort of set hairs running and had people's antenna going. It's very unusual for him not to answer a question. Even if he doesn't really want to answer the question, he usually will, and sometimes even probably says a little bit too much and more than he actually should. I think we've all experienced that. In this instance, he didn't want to answer whatsoever. And the key part, I think, really from Jamie's questioning was his final question, where he asked, so you're saying that you don't want to talk about why you can't play your perfect 3-4-3. Does that mean that something's changed with the transfer budget? Has there been a conversation with Jason Wilcox? Those are the two sort of sub-questions that he put to him. Amorim said again, I don't want to talk about it. And then he said, but you're a smart guy, which hints at that those issues are perhaps at the forefront of his mind and of what he's not wanting to refer to. Again, this is within the context of a whole press conference that felt like his mood was very flat, just very deflated, again, from the moment that he walked in. And I think it set things up for this game and set a lot of questions about exactly his mood right now, the level of support that he feels within the club. You'll have seen reports over the weekend to that effect, whether he feels that he can play his system, whether he feels he's going to be supported in the transfer market. He didn't say a lot, but with the little that he did say, it posed a lot of questions.
Andy, you've written recently about the January window and how fans might want money to be spent. It might not necessarily be the case. Are these quotes from the pre-match embargo section surprising to you?
There's something going on, and it happens in working relationships. It's very difficult for me to say definitively what is going on. I was in that press conference at Elland Road, and I'd spoken to Critch, what angles being talked about, and the manager wasn't really being discussed, and we thought that may have been the case before the game. And then in the final question at a press conference, you got that answer where straight away, the guy who was holding the door, who works for Leeds United, he was like, wow, I've just really heard that. And he said to me, how long is he going to be manager? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know exactly what he means. He doesn't make it clear what he means. He's almost talking in riddles, and we're now trying to decipher what he means. I wrote what I knew about the transfer stuff, and I know exactly what I mean. You can ask me about any of the stuff that I've written, and I'll tell you clearly what I meant. I do not know what the situation is with Ruben Amorim, other than, as Critch has talked on, what we suspect. He doesn't look like a happy bunny. It seems like a shot at those above or around him. He kept reiterating the point, I'm the manager, not the coach. And I'm thinking, well, actually your job title is coach. So that's why I'm a little bit confused. I suspect it's there's different opinions going into Manchester United, and he probably feels that his opinion is not aligned completely with some of the other people around him. To which extent they deviate, I do not know the answer. I think Ruben Amorim speaks to the people around him most days. They're never going to agree on everything. But it seems this week that it's a little bit more fraught than normal. Is that because there's more games? Is that because he's missing so many players? Is that because it's the transfer window and he's disappointed? Is he disappointed to miss out on Semenyo? I just don't know. That's why I'm talking about it like this.
Laurie, I want your thoughts on this, but I am going to read out the quote for everyone. I noticed you received selective information about everything. I came here to be the manager of Manchester United, not to be the coach of Manchester United. That is clear. I know that my name is not Tuchel, it is not Conte, it is not Mourinho, but I am the manager of Manchester United. It's going to be like this for 18 months or when the board decide to change. That was my point. I want to finish with that. I'm not going to quit. I will do my job until another guy is coming here to replace me.
Yeah, I mean, so, and can I just clarify with you guys, what was the question exactly? Can you remember? Is it, has anything changed from the board? Was that it?
Yeah, essentially that. I mean, I'm not going to remember it verbatim, but it was in reference, first of all, let me try. It was in reference, first of all, to his mood on Friday, essentially, and how downbeat he'd seemed then, and whether that was an indication that anything had changed and whether he still felt he had a level of support within the club.
Yeah, thanks for reading that out, Carl, because it is important to get the exact wording, because he sort of repeated it, didn't he, in a couple of other answers, but he obviously had a message in his mind that he wanted to get across in terms of, I am the manager, I came here to be the manager, mentioning 18 months, which is obviously when his contract ends, although he has got a +1, so maybe he's not sort of thinking about the +1 being triggered at this particular stage. But as Andy says, he was brought in as head coach. That was the whole Ineos sort of ethos, really, and that was partly the issue with Erik ten Hag, wasn't it, where he was manager and there was sort of push and pull over that. I sense that he's trying to mark his territory a bit here, where he's saying, listen, there's certain things that have been discussed. I do think transfers is one of them. And I think you're right in that Antoine Semenyo would have been a brilliant addition for him from his perspective. He's spoken, hasn't he, about having a sort of Ahmad on the left. Although I know sort of subsequently to that point, United were sort of saying, or people associated with United were saying that they weren't planning to use Semenyo in that way, but it's hard to say exactly where he would fit into that team if he is going to play a back three system, which then also is another point of interest, right? So he plays a sort of back four against Bournemouth. He played certainly a back four against Newcastle, goes back to the back three against Wolves. And I mean, these conversations happen around sort of tactics all the time. Jason Wilcox is, the director of football, and he's at training, he's at Carrington, he watches sessions, he has conversations with Ruben Amorim all the time. I think agree with Andy that they're not going to agree all the time, certainly. I'm told that Jason Wilcox likes the 4-3-3 formation, for example, that brought Manchester City such success. So you're sort of wondering, are there kind of conversations that go on around the formation that then Ruben Amorim is just sort of reminding people that it's his call only in terms of what the team will look like when it takes to the field. I am sort of speculating a little bit here, but I think it's fair to, given the strength of the quotes from Ruben Amorim, given he could have just moved on, brushed it off, and I think he clearly wants to get some message out there. And listen, it's interesting, he's sort of saying the information you're giving is selective. I don't know exactly by who. Does he mean sort of, sources to journalists, or does he mean even from the club in terms of his, the branding? Like I say, they announced him as the head coach, but if he's, privately being told, well, you will be the manager, you will be absolutely across transfers and formation, style of play, etc., then I guess that's an interesting point of sort of difference to get into. I even thought, for example, the quote about if people cannot handle the Gary Neville's, the criticism of everything, we need to change. So that, he's done this before, hasn't he? He's sort of brought on change, after the Grimsby game, for example, at numerous points sort of last season, really. But it's interesting that he's kind of brought up the Gary Neville criticism, and obviously the other criticism that players and him as a head coach, manager gets of Manchester United from pundits formerly of the club. So, and I think he probably is saying there as well, it takes a lot to manage this club, right? Like, so you are going to get this kind of criticism, this kind of ecosystem of people with strong opinions all the time, sort of questioning maybe. And certainly I think Gary Neville was quite vocal, wasn't he, on commentary about the system changes that were happening. So maybe that's his point that he's getting at. But I think it's a really fascinating point. Like I say, we've only got a couple of days now really until the Burnley game. So, I'm sure we'll get more stuff. He didn't do a pre-Burnley presser, did he, after the Leeds game?
No, I imagine we've not had the confirmation email for it, but I imagine that's Tuesday as it normally would be. He didn't do one post-match.
So we'll hear more from Ruben Amorim soon. I mean, let's see what mood he's in at that point. I
think it's interesting that I think you're absolutely right. He's had a point that he's wanted to get across here, and he's made sure that he has. He could have just repeated exactly what he said on Friday. He didn't. He's thought about it since then, and he's taken a different tack. And it's also a very different tack from pre-Christmas or just a couple of weeks ago when, you know, if, again, we're speculating here and I don't want to speculate too much, but if he's talking about a system change, he sounded quite on board with the idea that he would change system pre-Christmas. If we're talking about transfers, then he was sounding more positive on that as well. Now, circumstances can change with transfers, but the fact that things seem to be, he was very collegiate, I would say, beforehand, and it sounded like everybody was moving in the same direction. And when he spoke about previous signings like Cunha and Mbeumo, it's about the fact that the club wants to move in this direction together and the manager and the hierarchy are aligned on it. This is such a sharp change of tack in a short space of time. I don't think any of us really thought this was going to come, I don't know, maybe even Boxing Day after the Newcastle win. And that was, just a little more than a week ago. So it does indicate that something has gone on. We don't want to speculate about it. I guess it's our job, as I was saying to Andy actually earlier before, it's just our job to try and find out what over the coming days.
He's named Thomas Tuchel. He's named Antonio Conte. Two managers that United have reportedly looked at in the past. He's named Jose Mourinho, who's been here before. Has something changed here?
I don't know why he's naming them, Carl. I don't know what his point is. Do you, lads? I don't.
Does he mean
understand.
like these are big name managers? These are guys that would absolutely demand control of a club. I mean, Conte certainly would. Mourinho certainly did, and then fell out with everybody when, you know, he had issues, didn't he, with the transfer strategy at United with Ed Woodward. And Tuchel was obviously the guy that they spoke to when they were first looking to replace Erik ten Hag, and ultimately that didn't come to pass for different reasons. But I assume that's why he's naming those guys, right?
Also, maybe respect. I don't know. Again, I don't want to speculate too much, but you would imagine a Tuchel,
give it
Conte.
the full Jose.
Yeah, exactly. Respect, man. Respect. Jamie Jackson as well.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
cameo there, of course. Troublemaker. But you'd associate if it was a Tuchel, a Conte or a Mourinho, then they would carry that level of authority and respect. That, and he's saying, look, I know that his previous career was contained completely within Portugal. You know, he only became a head coach, 8 years ago now? It's been a rapid ascent for Ruben Amorim. So I thought that maybe he was just getting to the fact that, look, maybe I don't have necessarily as much pedigree as some other guys who maybe could have taken this job in another life or at another time. But I'm the manager of Manchester United and I deserve to be treated with the same level of, respect and authority.
Andy, you said just minutes ago that he's the head coach. This is about his job title. Ruben Amorim was announced in November as the head coach of Manchester United. To date, to my mind, the very first head coach in Manchester United history. And it didn't appear to be tension when that was first announced, but there appears to be something now.
When you're in Portugal, it's entirely normal to work with a sports director. I mean, some of the sports directors at the biggest clubs are really well known within football, and they're very, very powerful positions. So I couldn't understand it if Ruben Amorim's coming to the point where he's saying he's not aligned with working with any form of sports director. These conversations need to be had. No one person makes all the decisions. Even Sir Alex Ferguson, who was almighty, he still had to speak to David Gill. They still had to speak to the Glazers. There were still times when deals couldn't be done or he didn't get what he wants. There are conversations every single day at a football club among the different departments. I don't know the specifics of why he's come out this week and is talking like this beyond what I've just alluded to earlier. Is it because of the fixtures? Is it because of the transfer window? But it has certainly become the main talking point after that game. And fans don't need much to jump onto something. You know, we're getting messaging now. Is he gonna? Is he going? Is he going? I don't know. If any of you lads do, enlighten us. I just don't know. Seen managers go through tense positions before. I've seen, Laurie said Jose Mourinho, you're watching him the last 6 months. It was very, very clear on a weekly basis that everything had changed. You could just see it. Louis van Gaal, you knew that Manchester United had been speaking to Mourinho and he'd been completely undermined. And there was this facade going on where he was, no, don't know what you're on about. I'm still in charge. And it was weird. I certainly
he
don't
even
have a
gave
sense.
an address, didn't he, after winning the FA Cup final, Van Gaal, to his players with like pre-season plans. And the next day, you know, he's gone and Jose's in.
Yeah, yeah. And I've certainly not heard of Manchester United speaking to any other coaches. I think this season has been bumpy throughout, but Manchester United are still on target, you know, still 5th, 6th in the table to reach this season's aim, which is European football. And you can counter that and say, well, that's not good enough, but that is the target for this season. Now, Ruben Amorim was not told you've got to win the league this year. He knows I think there's been alignment as to what the target is. And Manchester United are broadly on target to reach that target. I think the team need to start winning more, because you sometimes look at it and think, how are we 5th still? Barely winning any matches, but the league tables are not lying, are they? And when the players come back, I spoke to a few people after the game, you'd think that Manchester United would improve again. I think it's an extremely emotional club. There's been a big downer after the Wolves game. So you have these big peaks and troughs according to the preceding result. And had Ruben Amorim not said anything after the Leeds game, I think it would have been all right until Burnley, because I think that Leeds result is a credible result.
But
because
that's what
he
makes
did,
it all the more pronounced, doesn't it, Andy? Because you could have just gone through that, like, you know, critical performance, which we'll get onto, right? We will actually discuss the performance, but you could have gone past that, right? But he obviously wanted to make a point. He was waiting for the question, I think. He knew it was coming. He had a point to make.
Right then. I guess we have to wait until Thursday to discuss more about Ruben Amorim's post-match press conferences. For now, let's talk about how Manchester United climbed up to 5th in the table. It's 1-1 draw at Leeds, at Elland Road. Mark, you said go away with the point, decent. Andy, loud, worth your while, good trip.
Yeah, it's a real experience. It's like no other ground in the Premier League, because it's not been affected by that Premier League gloss. You do not see many. Is it still
called the Lurpak stand?
Well, one of them's named after Jack Charlton. I mean, the stands are such a hodgepodge, Laurie. There's outbuildings. I think that Manchester United players got changed in a building that's been built onto the back of a stand, which was originally built in the 1930s. I mean, architecturally, it is an absolute mess.
Do you like that, mess, though? A bit of organic growth, you know what I mean? You know, sod these kind of manufactured, you know, identikit stadiums.
Cereal bowls.
Critch sort of touched on that as we walked away, but it's awful. It really is. Okay. I think even a Leeds fan would find any architectural merit, but it is a bear pit. You know, it really has virtues as an intimidating venue to go to. I mean, there were two men sat behind me, just absolutely slaughtering Manchester United throughout the entire game. I didn't even turn around to look at them. I did take one picture where I might be able to just sort of see them in the background, but it was hatred. I'm pleased to say I didn't hear any Munich songs, because previous visits were marked by them. Other people may tell me different. So when they started singing "Stand Up If You Hate Man U," the whole ground stood up. Literally every single person, apart from the away fans, and they're very, very proud of their identity. It's a big city. It's a one city club, and you felt that they would like nothing more than to beat Manchester United. But you also felt that, I think they've gone 8 points clear of the relegation zone. They would have settled for that at the start of the season when their aim was staying up, because they keep going up and down. I think Manchester United probably edged it, but I can't argue too strongly against 1-1 being an unfair result, because Leeds had good chances themselves and had a few decent players. We know Dominic Calvert-Lewin's like in the air. It was.
Can I just check, Andy? Were you in the Leeds fans then? Is that what you said earlier?
No, I was in the media, but me and Critch had to go through the cage to go into the United end.
Right.
As if we were like, it was weird. Normally you just go to the ground and then we walk into the United end. So you're speaking to all your mates. How are you doing? You know, and then you go into a different section and you sat in the main stand. But I was sat right next to Leeds fan. I think they might have done it just to wind me up, because, I mean, They put me on the last seat. And if someone's in Leeds and they know who I am or what I do, is like, we'll give them a little taste of what Yorkshire atmosphere is like.
It was proper front line. You were on the edge of and the lads behind you, what they were screaming in your ear most of the game. I wouldn't repeat it because we'll get legal letters. So it was very hostile atmosphere. I noticed that you had your hood up, and did you have like a little snood or something? You did not want to be recognised at all, and you were recognised quite a lot. We walked in there, and the amount of people that come up and say hello to Andy Mitten who aren't even necessarily Manchester United fans. I mean, I couldn't live like that, to be honest.
Right, so that was in the away end where the people absolutely were Manchester United fans, or you'd flipping hope they were. But then I went right on the main entrance.
A couple of stewards, though.
Yeah, the steward, but also that Leeds lad. He used to be my goalkeeper for a team I ran.
Of course he did.
He just saw me and he's like, "Hey up, Jack's here," in his Yorkshire accent. And he's a lovely lad, and he's actually doing work at Leeds United. I'm like, "No way did you tell me you're working for Leeds United now?" And he's like, "Hey, by gum, got to live in Anta." And that was that. But I survived it. I want Leeds to lose every single game they play against Manchester United, but I do have a begrudging respect for the identity around their club in terms of the noise they make. And I went to the Man City Liverpool game for work a month or two ago, and the tram was just full of what I'd call football tourists. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there was everything wrong with it at the same time. You go to Leeds, and everyone in that ground is from Leeds, no mistaking. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I'm saying? It's very, very, it's very earthy.
You could definitely see quite a few Leeds fans flicking the V's and calling Luke Shaw and Cunha all sorts of things every time they went up for a corner kick. United went down a goal early on in the second half. Aronson sneaking through against Aden Heaven. What do you make of that one, Laurie?
Yeah, awkward one for Heaven, who's been, I think, really, really good. He won the Player of the Month, didn't he, as well, for December. So, yeah, I think he's been brilliant since he's come into the team after that sort of early wobble against West Ham, which I think was kind of down to ring rust, really. But he did get a warning from Harrison, didn't he, just before that point. It was like down by the touchline where I think he thought he was going to shepherd it out, and then Aronson nipped in. And it was a heavy touch, so Lomans kind of came out and claimed it. And I just think Aronson just has this kind of freakish, sort of dogged speed about him that Heaven kind of wasn't totally appreciative of. Although the ball did have a kind of funny spin on it. But anyway, you're kind of looking at that thinking it's a soft goal for United to concede from when, like I say, I think they had pretty good control of the game for the majority, really. There was none of this kind of bluster and as well, rather blood and thunder that they had against, Chelsea that stunned them and Crystal Palace that were battered and Liverpool that kind of, crumbled when they had, a comfortable lead, what looked like. So, yeah, but that goal, yeah, Heaven won't look that fondly on. But I think generally the back three were pretty good. Martinez, I thought, was excellent again. I think him coming back into the team has been pretty crucial at this stage of the season, certainly. And yeah, I mean, Luke Shaw as well, playing at wing back, which we weren't sure. Could he do that for a full game? Thought he did pretty well. That header at the far post in the first half, what a brilliant header that was, with the sun kind of shining on him and kind of being able to judge it and know that he needed to get a contact on it and exactly what to do. And he even got forwards, didn't he? I mean, they kind of, I won't go too much into this because I'm sure we're concentrating on the goal that United conceded, but the kind of, if Sesko, I think, had been a bit sharper in the box, I think it could have been a different occasion. And Shaw was kind of involved in one of those instances when he kind of got forward and he did really well down the left and didn't put the ball in straight away. And that's when Sesko, I think, got downhearted, sort of stranded offside and wasn't really prepared for Casemiro to put the ball in. And he was offside anyway and put the ball wide. But if it actually been, on his toes, back, got onside, he would have been in perfect position to head the ball, really. So, but yeah, on that point on Shaw, I just thought he actually did get advanced as well as do the kind of defensive work. So, yeah, I just thought kind of a pretty, apart from that, yeah, like I say, the goal that Leeds scored, I thought, United really limited them.
Critch, any star performance for you today?
I thought Xerxes' impact when he came on was notable. Not just given that he was brought on as soon as Harrison scored, and then within a minute later he's setting up Cunha for the equaliser. But even the move, I mean, Šeško's chance that he puts wide, I thought that was probably United's best move of the game, and Xerxes was right at the heart of it, and he just had a little bit more, I don't know, like craft, I guess, that United were lacking in the performance beforehand. Otherwise, I thought that, generally speaking, defensively, it felt like a solid performance. I agree with Laurie. I think the back three across that, Leeds are going to ask questions, especially with the crosses that they put in for Calvert-Lewin, but United were equal to them for the most part. The one caveat that I would apply to the performance, really, and the one criticism of it would be that I'm still not entirely certain how this team is supposed to create chances. I was saying that sometimes when Bruno Fernandes was in the team. Now that he's not, it still feels like, and this is a very easy criticism that people make, but it feels like a moments team at right now. They rely on set pieces as well. That was one of the more threatening things. It became quite a difficult game to string a few passes together. And I think until really Xerxes was on the pitch, it didn't feel like United were constructing attacks and getting a lot of chances that you ultimately need a volume of them in order to win these types of games. So I think that is... But it's something that will mend itself once Bruno Fernandes is back to an extent. You have to take the absences into account on that measure. But I did feel that more positives on the defensive side rather than attacking.
Andy, you were nodding your head there.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of sevens in that Manchester United performance today. The biggest disappointment was probably Benjamin Šeško, but even there, as Amorim said after the game, he was getting in the right positions. It was tough because he's isolated. Your side's missing so many players, but the ball wasn't really sticking with him. And Šeško had a couple of chances where he should have scored. There's a big miss in front of the cop from 6 yards out, and he didn't hit the target. And I know he works hard, and there's nobody around him for long periods, but he needs a goal. And the manager, coach, head coach, whatever we're going to call him, he said he needs a goal, and he does. But we're now over the halfway point in the season. We can't be saying this in a year's time. He just needs a goal, because we're then back into Rasmus Højlund territory. Although Amorim was pointed out that they're completely different types of players. Xerxes deserves his flowers. He played a wonderful ball inside that right channel to set up the equaliser as soon as he came on the pitch. And I'm told that people in United think that Xerxes would fit in really well in another big club, just not the formation that Ruben Amorim uses. There's something there, and a lot of United fans have probably given up on Josh Xerxes, but he did well when he came on. He was the main man. For Cunha gave the ball away too much, but he was probably Manchester United's best player for me. Casemiro and Agati in the middle, totally different. And your point about the defence being relatively solid was true. Would have been a travesty to lose that game. That would have really, really felt bad. Neither team created so many chances. The last 10 minutes, it was like an 11-a-side, 11-year-olds playing in a schoolboy match. It was horrible to watch, but then you're thinking this is blood and thunder. And I like this with Leeds in Manchester United. It's just madness. Loads of jeopardy everywhere. When the final whistle went, oh, okay, thank you.
I quite weirdly enjoyed that period. I know it wasn't great quality then because they were giving the ball away, and Leeds, I actually were a bit disappointed with them, really. I thought United, they could really have won. I know we're giving them credit for the kind of performance in the circumstances, given all the absentees, but I thought their passing, certainly the second half, through the lines was quite good. Ugarte was actually all right at that, sort of receiving the ball in space and turning well and progressing the ball. And actually Amorim made point of sort of saying that too, the broadcasters after the game, which was interesting given we know that he's had sort of issues with Ugarte's application, shall we say, previously. So I suppose that's why there's that regret there, because I do feel that if United had been able to kind of just construct more of those moves, they were doing some nice stuff at times. Dorgu clipping it over to Dalot in the first half, for example. The move that was just touched on there, Andy, Šeško put wide ultimately with Xerxes running in behind and crossing it, was nice as well. I agree with you, Cunha gave the ball away too much, but I do think he was the one that was saying, give me the ball and trying things and trying to run with it and unsettle Leeds, and had that character, had that personality that you need in a contest like that. I just think Šeško, he's sort of, he's a funny player, right? Because his first touch sometimes is like quite cumbersome, but then he'll get it under control and do like a little back heel that'll set a team away. And you're sort of thinking, okay, he's obviously got that link-up play that you do need. But then at other times he seems a bit uncertain about where to run. There was a moment late on in the game where he didn't make a run in behind when I think Xerxes had the ball, and in the end it just withered to nothing, the attack. And you're thinking, where's the aggression? Where's the dynamism there? And I suppose that is a consequence of a change in team, different formations, maybe not exactly knowing the triggers of when to do certain actions. But yeah, it's sort of one of those glass half full, glass half empty kind of performances and results, really.
Critch, we've got an email from Patrick here. This is on Sesko. At what point do we have to be concerned about United's ability to develop young strikers? I know there's an adjustment period when moving to the Premier League, especially for young players, but it seems the same issues with Sesko are present as other recent strikers.
I see the point. And it was one that, as Andy mentioned, Amorim was asked about afterwards in relation to the comparison between Sesko and Højlund. It's something that I've noted before, writing about signing Sesko and selling Højlund. It's that you both were 22-year-old, multi-million pound strikers signed from Europe who had modest scoring records at best and come into the team and are expected to lead the line without really adequate cover in that position, and so responsibility falls on their shoulders. It's something that we've not only seen in the striking position, we've seen different positions all over the pitch, young players being given perhaps a little bit more responsibility than they're ready for, and then being judged critically, often for performances that aren't really up to scratch. I'm still ready to give Šeško plenty of time, to be honest. I thought if we're taking this recent block of games since Christmas against Newcastle, I thought he was really good. I thought he was great, in fact, at managing to hold the ball up, bring others into play. And then when he went off against Newcastle as part of those subs that Amorim made on the hour mark, you really felt the difference with Xerxes there instead, not being able to win those long aerial kicks from Lamens. That is something that only really Šeško can do in this team. If you take the Wolves game, I don't think it was his best performance whatsoever, but we're still talking about a performance where he's hit the post. He's had a couple of chances that he's put straight at the keeper that he should do better with. He's also made a couple of chances for himself. I remember that one very early on where he sort of drove to the byline, used his strength to hold someone off, turned and shot, and it just went wide. Today, I don't think, again, it was his greatest display. But is that not just, again, as Amorim says, a consequence of the fact that he's putting in the performances, he's getting into positions, he needs that goal. He desperately needs that goal. I've seen enough about him. Look, if we want to compare to Højlund again, I think there's enough about him within his game, the physicality. When he can hold up a ball, it's impressive. He just needs to do it more often. He needs to do it more consistently. I wouldn't be too concerned, but I do think he'd benefit if maybe there was as Højlund would have done, if there was a more experienced striker that could take some of that load. But that's not the position that United are in at the moment, certainly not with the absences that they've got in the squad.
And Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Critch.
Oh, well.
Sorry, I'm throwing that bomb in there after, obviously he was available on a free. He was at one point considered by United before going to Leeds.
Amorim was asked about that on Friday as well, and I don't think it was the right day to ask him because it got very short shrift, that answer as well. But then he wasn't in the mood to answer many questions then, was he?
So Benjamin Sesko does need a goal. Here's hoping he can get one on Wednesday at Burnley. It's Manchester United's next fixture. Now, first things first, Burnley's form is not good. Since the end of August, they have 2 wins, 3 draws and 14 defeats. And those 2 wins were against Wolverhampton Wanderers and Leeds. So in amongst all this chat about Wolves being terrible and West Ham being terrible because Wolves beat them, is Burnley just sort of hanging around. Burnley also haven't had the best record against Manchester United with only 2 victories over the Reds since 1969. That's 37 matches. Oof. Are we in must win? Are we in this should be a straightforward win? Who dares venture forth with their opinion?
I said they should stick 4, 5, 6 past Wolves, didn't I? And look what happened. So I'm staying quiet. Somebody else can take this one.
Yes, Carl. Manchester United need wins. Somehow staying in 5th and 6th and in danger of going to 4th. This is not going to carry on forever if the team are not winning. And Burnley are their 2 wins have come at home. They've won 1 away game, I think. Manchester United have got to be winning now. Burnley have only scored 8 at goal at home, so they don't score. They scored significantly less than absolutely every other team. Are we crediting Wolves as being an hard-to-beat team now that they've got their act together after playing Manchester United? Are we looking at that?
West Ham 3-0,
They
didn't
absolutely put West Ham to the sword, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Manchester United got quite a good record at Burnley. And in answer to your question, absolutely. Manchester United need to win it.
Now, Burnley, well, if you want to talk about the AFCON picture, Tunisia were eliminated in AFCON yesterday, 3-2 to Mali. So Hannibal, possibly, if he gets on a private jet and is quick enough, could be back in time for this fixture. It looks as if Jules Breach on TNT Sport asked Ruben Amorim if any players could be back for this game. And Amorim said, we'll see, suggesting one of Bruno Fernandes or Mason Mount is possibly on the way back. The bench wasn't that strong against Leeds United. Is it same again? Or maybe, possibly, someone could play their way into contention for Wednesday?
Did you put Xerxes in after that?
Do you put Xerxes back into that?
I just think, to Critch's point, I thought Sesko then, having that reference point of Xerxes to play off was nice. So, I don't think you can start the same. I don't think you can start 8 outfield sort of defensively, minded players at home away to Burnley, can you? God, I just thought then, remember that time that United went to Turf Moor and won, and it put them top of the table under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I know it didn't last that long, but so I think you can make you can make that change. He sounded confident on Fernandes. He said Fernandes will probably play some minutes, so I think that's a very big boost. I know that Mason Mount was the thought around him was that he would potentially even be back for the Leeds game, so you're sort of hoping that again has some substance to it for the Burnley game. And I think Amorim's obviously just been careful, to his credit, to not bring back players too soon because of the injury issues that United have had in the past, and particularly Mason Mount. So that would all of a sudden elevate the team. So if you're thinking if Bruno can play any minutes, you're thinking he's starting, right? Like, I don't see how he comes off the bench in that situation. So hopefully that's the case, and then it just changes the dynamic of the team, doesn't it? But does Xerxes then still come in? Maybe, I don't know, does Sesko drop out if Xerxes comes in? But that seems quite harsh. But I think Sesko needs a run, doesn't he? So I think that probably would be harsh. But at least then with Mount and Fernandes, you feel like the team's got a lot more scoring potential. I mean Cunha as well. I think he has to stay in. I know we were saying that he gave the ball away, but it was a very nice finish to get an equaliser in a pivotal moment.
Critchley got on the email from a listener here. This is from James, who says, awful results, brackets, Everton, West Ham, Wolves and Leeds, when we should have built our cushion for the European spot. Burnley arguably defines our entire season, even this whole football structure. Amorim, Wilcox, the lot.
Well, look, I think before Amorim's final question in tonight's post-match press conference, I would have disagreed with that. And I'm still tempted to disagree with it because I don't know if I can take another season-defining game. I don't know how many of these we need to have, or statement victories, Laurie, or whatever. Okay. But clearly, I think the context of those post-match comments do create a different edge around this game. It's going to be tough to see how the rest of the week falls if United don't win it within the context of these comments, and Ruben Amorim doing the press conference on Tuesday and then speaking again afterwards, potentially in his post-match as well. Whether we want to answer these questions in the way that he's answered them today, I'm not sure. But we've spent about an hour here discussing the game mostly. The big takeaway from today was what he said post-match, because the circumstances and the ramifications that could create going forward, they're big. We don't like to speculate, but it's a huge thing to come out and essentially speak against other people within the club, or the hierarchy of the club, and so that's going to colour the perceptions of the game. I think if they win, then that helps. People forget about it. People move on. But then I also thought the same about getting a 1-1 at Elland Road when a lot of people were very fearful about this game, and look what happened at the end of it. We're in that moment right now where, as much as things happen on the pitch, it's a lot of the noise that's off the pitch as well that's creating headlines. And no, I don't really see that changing. So unless they can get a win and maybe that puts it to bed a little bit.
Well, winning is the best cure. Critch, do you intend to go to the press conference on Tuesday?
Are we doing this now? Are we sorting out our logistical thing live on the podcast? I mean, I can do if you want.
These negotiations, please.
I don't mind. I think you're off anyway this week, are you?
You're never off when things like this happen at Manchester United.
That's true.
Right,
that is true.
Before I finish things off, I want to read one more email from a listener, Ahmed here, who says, they're a lifelong Red of 25 years from Egypt. Their YouTube confirms they're in the top 0.4% of Talker Devils viewers. He's also been a listener to AudioPod. And he says, apparently that's dedication. He calls it emotional damage management. They just want to say thank you for getting him through another Manchester United season, as misery loves company and we deliver it weekly. I hope it's the company, not the misery.
It's not over yet, Ahmed.
Yeah. Ahmed signs off by saying, you've made following United slightly more bearable, which is saying something. Up the suffering Reds. Thank you, Ahmed. That was really nice. Remember, you can email in to devilspod@theathletic.com with any questions, queries, or indeed just a vent about Manchester United. You can follow us at TOT Devils on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. No, I'm not calling it X. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and click the bell if you're watching this on YouTube. And also, just like in generally, have a nice week. It's a brand new year. Look after yourselves. I hope you've got a nice footballing resolution for the new year. We can talk about that at another date. Talk Devils is going to be back on Thursday. We'll be here, whatever happens. Take care.
Thanks for watching this episode of Talk of the Devils. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you've not done already. Like the video and also get involved in the comments too. And click the bell to make sure that you never miss an episode with myself, Andy Mitten, Anka, and Laurie Whitwell. There's also our social channels at TOT Devils on Instagram, X, and TikTok. Thanks for watching.